Hi, I'm Brian Crombie, and we're going to be talking on The Brian Crombie Show. We're going to be talking about politics, arts, business, and social issues on The Brian Crombie Show on Canada One TV. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to The Brian Crombie Show on Canada One TV. So we've got a municipal election coming up in 3 months. October the 24th is the date. And so I thought it would be really helpful to expose you to and introduce you to several of the different candidates that are running in different wards, and candidates for mayor and some other people that are involved in this election campaign. And tonight I want to introduce you to really an interesting guy who is a former member of parliament for Mississauga-Streetsville. He's currently Vice President of Stakeholder Relations, the Government and Stakeholder Relations at the Mississauga Board of Trade, and he's going to be a candidate in the upcoming election for Ward 11, Mississauga. Brad Butt, how are you, sir?
I'm good. Thanks for the invite, Brian.
So you've been involved in Mississauga politics and community events and stuff your whole life, I think.
Pretty much.
And your dad was very involved in Mississauga politics and stuff as well, was he not?
Yeah, he was. He served a term on the Old Port Credit Council and one term on the Mississauga Council.
Fantastic.
So runs a little bit in the blood.
So Ward 11 has been held by the incumbent for a long period of time. It's the first time it's going to be sort of up for grabs. Why did you decide to run?
Well, I mean, you were absolutely correct. After 22 years, Councillor George Carlson has decided not to seek re-election. I live in Streetsville. I'm very active in that community with a number of volunteer organizations. As you mentioned, I did serve as the Member of Parliament for most of that ward by boundary from 2011 to 2015. So I think I know the community really, really well. Mm-hmm. And we're going to need a new councillor. And I think we need a councillor who has experience and understanding of the issues, knows how the City of Mississauga and Region Appeal work, can hit the ground running on day one. So I'm looking forward to the campaign. There's a lot to do between now and October 24th, but I really do believe that I can be the right person for that ward at this time with my background and my experience.
What do you think the big issues are for people in Ward 11?
Well, I think the issues in Ward 11 are similar to what you hear across the city. I think people are concerned about affordable housing now. Mm-hmm. They were before, but it's really resonating now. Traffic and transportation issues are always top of mind with folks, whether it's speeding on a small residential street or whether it's getting the Hurontario LRT built in Mississauga and having light rail transit up and down our major thoroughfare. Locally, it's always development. The development issues are always, not always, but often somewhat controversial when especially with infill development. And we're going to have to look at that. Streetsville is a prime community for future development. And again, we're going to need a strong councillor who understands the development process, can work with the community, make sure we have the public meetings that we need to get our community input as we move forward. Property taxes, and then general government services. I mean, people forget the amount of services the municipal government actually does deliver to you literally every single day. If you think about snow plowing and garbage collection and your local library and community center, I mean, that's all local government that we are responsible for, and those affect people in their daily lives all the time.
So I'm a little bit familiar with Mississauga-Streetsville as well as you may remember. One of the issues I think that I would have thought was GO Transit and the Streetsville GO and getting all-day two-way frequent GO train service on that Milton-Mississauga line. What do you think is happening there, if anything, and what would you be wanting to do?
Yeah, well, as you're well aware, that is predominantly an area of provincial jurisdiction. It's really up to the provincial government to set the rules and to properly fund a system that would allow two-way all-day GO on the Milton line, which would include the Streetsville GO station, of course. I mean, I advocated strongly for that as a member of parliament over a decade ago, and unfortunately, the provincial government at the time, and even the federal government I served with at the time, were really not interested in sort of looking at that issue, unfortunately. And then the election happened and life goes on. But we seem to have a willing federal partner now, which is great. It looks as if Metrolinx and the Ontario government are getting more serious about getting back to the table with Canadian Pacific, because we have to remember those rail lines belong to Canadian Pacific Railways. They don't belong to the city or the province. I mean, they're private rail lines that we would have to get access to on a more frequent basis to allow for two-way all-day go. So I'll continue to be a champion for that and make the argument that it needs to get done, as I know the mayor and members of council have in Mississauga for many, many years. And hopefully we're going to see it to fruition fairly soon. But you're absolutely right. That's a very important issue for...
I understand two of the biggest, costliest impacts and potential impacts that people might not like if you ended up building more tracks because Metrolinx got access to the land is going across the Credit River, because you'd need a wider bridge, and Mississauga Road. And Mississauga Road is one of the only non-grade separated parts of that lane, and it's on a curve, and so and it's there's houses right there beside. So thinking about grade separation would be next to impossible.
You would think so. I mean, I'm not an engineer, so I can't tell you all the details of what's involved, but that's a very good point. But I live right on the CPR track in Streetsville. My office window in the condominium I live in overlooks the track. I see what's going on every day between GO trains and freight trains up and down there every day. It is busy. It is very busy. And to get CPR, Canadian Pacific, who predominantly makes their money out of moving freight, to get them to have less trains there and to divert some of the freight elsewhere so the GO trains can move, that's a tough negotiating tactic.
When the federal government pays for a bypass account around, what was it, Lake Megantic, and the mayor of Calgary demands that do the same thing in Calgary because of a tipping train derailment in Calgary, I'm shocked that all of the CP rail freight traffic, including oil, gas, dangerous goods and regular goods, goes right through Streetsville, goes right through Mississauga, goes right through Toronto between the Annex and the Summerhill LCBO. Like it's frankly shocking to me. And then people say, "Oh, we'll never have a derailment in a major urban center." But we did in 1978.
Well, and a lot of them are fuel tankers, because I see them go by my window every day. So we know that there's likely some dangerous product that are on those. But you're right. I mean, knock on wood, there hasn't been a problem. Of course, some of us remember the train derailment, but that was at Mavis Road back in 1979 that was liquid chlorine that led to that explosion and fire and the evacuation of 280,000 people.
Largest evacuation in Canada in peacetime.
Yeah, and put Hazel on the map. And deservedly so, because she handled that situation extremely well.
If you get elected, I hope you fight for that GO train line.
Absolutely.
To be passenger traffic and not freight.
Yeah, well, there are ways to divert that freight, but again, you've got to get CP on board, to some degree Canadian National as well, because there might be a requirement to share some of those tracks. So there is a lot of work to do, but it's doable.
Yeah.
And I think if everybody gets to the table, we can get it done.
Okay, one more issue on GO Transit before we take a break. What about the Streetsville parking lot, the Streetsville GO parking lot? There's the plans to develop all of it into quite a development. And I see, what's happened in Oakville, and what's happening in Port Credit, and in Arundel. Have you seen not Arundel, Cooksville? Have you seen that massive structure? In Cooksville, it's like an office building that's a garage.
Yeah. I've seen it. Yeah, Streetsville's going to be a little bit different, in my opinion, than some of those other major transit areas where the province has already mandated higher densities and intensification, et cetera. Streetsville, I think, has a history, and certainly the official plan and zoning bylaws show that too for the area, that it's more modest development that we tend to see in that area. So if there ever is a development proposal that comes forward from Metrolinx, or if they sell it off to a real estate developer, there's going to be a lot of work that's going to need to be done to look at what's the proposal, what are we looking at in terms of densities and number of units? Because Streetsville is not Cooksville. Cooksville is a completely different situation with massive high rises already there, and some that have been there for 30 plus years. So Streetsville doesn't have that. But we'll have to look at what's proposed, and we'll sit down and we'll work with the community and others, and we'll go there. We know we need more housing. Everybody knows we need more housing. It's a supply and demand issue that's leading to the affordable housing crisis that we have.
Well, let's take a break and come back and talk about affordable housing.
That'd be great.
Excellent.
Yeah.
We're going to take a break. Brad Butt, councillor for Ward 11, Mississauga, chatting with me tonight. See you in just 2 minutes. Stay with us, everybody. Welcome back, everyone, to the Brian Crombie Show on Canada One TV. I'm chatting tonight with Brad Butt. He's a long-term activist within Mississauga politics. He was the member of Parliament for Mississauga Streetsville for 4 years back, 4 years ago, 6 years ago. And he is currently working with the Mississauga Board of Trade as the Vice President at Government and Stakeholder Relations. And he's put his name for it to run for candidate for councillor in Ward 11, which is the Mississauga Streetsville area of Mississauga. And we've been chatting about transit. Maybe I could chat with you about affordable housing. So I interviewed some people from CMHC, and they've come forward with a projection that Southern Ontario, so not just the GTA, not just Mississauga, but Southern Ontario needs 1.8 million more homes than we would build otherwise. So that's on top of what would be normally built in the next 8 years, if we want to have what they deem to be affordable housing. And affordable housing is when they say people don't spend more than 40% of their disposable income on gas and housing. 1.8 million homes. Build has said something of the same thing, that we're building 50,000 less homes than we need. The projections that come from a lot of different economic organizations is there's a city the size of Montreal moving to Toronto, the greater Toronto area, in the next 10 years. So, whoever you look at it, there's a huge amount of population growth going to be happening. Mississauga Streetsville isn't very dense. Streetsville's not that dense. Yeah. You've got a beautiful, village core. You take a look at sort of, Oakville Village Core, or, better example I think would be Port Credit Village Core. They're building a lot of condominiums, maybe not right on in where the restaurants are and the bars are and their shops are, but a block away and a block behind. Don't you think if we need more housing, and if we don't have more housing, we're not going to be able to be affordable? We need to have more density in Streetsville?
Well, I think we need to have more density, but I don't think we're ever going to have some of those towers that we're talking about.
Think so?
No, I don't think so, because I don't think it's built for that. Queen Street, which is also known as Mississauga Road, but if you're in the village, it's Queen Street. It is only a small 2-lane roadway. There just isn't the ability. It's not 4 lanes, it's 2. So if we're going to start building very large high-rise apartment buildings up and down Queen Street, I just don't think that's on. I don't think from a movement perspective that we can do that. And I don't think we really have the strong infrastructure to do it. Now, does that mean that we can't do some other stuff beyond what has traditionally been some of the height issues and density? I'm sure we can look at that. I think the community needs to have a wider conversation about that, because there's always 2 sides to this. I get people complaining to me about affordable housing, but then when there's a development that's proposing actually to build some of it, they don't want it.
Exactly.
So that's a job as a councillor. We have to work to try and bring those interests together and do the best we can. And I know there's going to be a lot of development pressure in the Ward 11 community over the next number of years. And that's again why I think the ward needs someone that understands development. I was president and CEO of the Greater Toronto Apartment Association for 12 years. So that's before I became an MP, and that's an association of owners of rental apartments. And back when I ran that association, nobody wanted to build rental. Nobody was interested. Nobody talked about it. Now it's the exact opposite. Developers and builders want to build it, but here's the problem. We stifle them. We hold up the development process. We hold up the building permits. We make them pay massive levies up front that they can't get financing for to do. Yet they'd like to build a 50-unit purpose-built rental apartment building in Streetsville that we desperately need. So one of the things I'm going to look at doing as a councillor is, how do we fix that? If someone comes to the table and wants to build rental housing, which we desperately need, lots of that can be subsidized so that you can get to lower income people to allow them to live there as well.
Brad,
we can get it done.
I've heard people tell me that in all the GTA, the worst place to put forward a development proposal is Mississauga. It's the slowest to get dealt with.
I hear that all the time. But I also hear, our councillors and planning staff say we're right in line with where we should be, and the average is good.
Toronto brags that you can get a development proposal seen and approved or turned down quicker in Toronto than in any other place.
Well, that's true.
And one of it is that during COVID, they just went digital on a whole bunch of different stuff.
Yeah.
But Mississauga...
Well, we've gone to e-plans in Mississauga too, and a lot of it is digital. But there is a problem there that I would like to see addressed and looked at. It is taking too long to get things approved. I mean, maybe stuff in the city core, the Rogers development and that, maybe that stuff's getting through quick. But in these other areas that desperately need housing built, the builder developers are just telling me it's in some cases a nightmare.
I lived here for 23 years, so not as long as you, but for a while, 23 years. My kids couldn't afford to live in Mississauga anymore.
Yeah.
Right? They're going to, they're either going to be in a 500 square foot condo downtown, or they're going to be in Georgetown. Nothing against Georgetown, but if they, and coming from a reasonably affluent family, they can't still afford to buy a house in Mississauga as a young, couple potentially having kids. Yeah. And that's not the type of community we want, is it?
That's not the type of community I want. And I have a personal example of that. You gave yours, I'll give you mine. So my 22-year-old daughter, who works for a interior design firm in Toronto, she has rented a condo in Toronto. She wanted to still be in Mississauga and commute. She actually found a better deal to rent a one-bedroom. She's got about 850 square feet. It's at Yonge and Charles. I've been to see the condo a few times. It's beautiful. It's a beautiful building. And she's paying quite a bit less in rent than she would to rent an apartment in Mississauga in one of those condo buildings. What does that tell you? In Toronto. Well, and she can take the subway into work.
Yeah, I think one of the problems is just the time. And I'm not suggesting that you approve things that shouldn't be approved, but I think if you just dealt with them more quickly, both with the planning staff and the councils and the planning commission, you'd be a lot better off. Okay, so we've talked transit, we've talked planning. What about safety? We've had so many comments about car thefts and some murders and some shootings. What's going on with safety in Mississauga?
Well, I'm quite concerned about that, and I had the opportunity to be the founding chair of the board of Safe City Mississauga when it was created in 2008 and used to be the Mississauga Crime Prevention Association. We know the community has to play a role in crime prevention. They have to play a role in working with the police and others to look at these issues. But yeah, I'm concerned. We've certainly seen a rise in a number of areas. Some are more high profile, make the news than others. Our police chief does a number of annual speeches and he talks about the stats and stuff. And I know they are concerned with where things are going, but this is all about bringing folks together, including the police, to try and look at and address some of these issues. Now, if we think we need legislative changes, because I'll give you an example. I was talking to somebody the other day while I was sitting on a patio in Streetsville, and one of those cars with the absolutely loudest muffler you've ever heard in your entire life whips by. We stopped the conversation, and it's like, why is this guy not getting arrested? Well, the person I happen to sit with is someone that knows the law and knows policing a lot better than I do, and said, police really don't have the tools to go after a guy like that. They really don't. It's a slap on the wrist. There isn't a real fine. There isn't like a real charge for that. They'll never get the lesson if they're not whacked. Yeah. So that's just one example where I think we would need our friends at the province to help us with some legislative improvements. But I mean, I think the police do an awfully good job. I think we're very blessed with Peel Regional Police in this community. And they're challenged like everybody else. But I know people are concerned about community safety, and there's been the car break-ins and the thefts and the other stuff. And we just have to continue to work with the community and then work with Peel Regional Police.
Last question. I know you've been a big supporter of the arts and the Mississauga Arts Council and organizations like that. I interviewed Gil Moore, former drummer of
long-time family friend.
And he said, when I asked him what Mississauga needs, he said, Mississauga needs more rock and roll establishments. And he said that, a whole bunch of really good bands, including his band, got their start in the Masonic Lodge, which is right there in Streetsville.
Yeah.
And he said, the problem is today, there aren't those kinds of, you go from a bar, whether it be in Streetsville or Port Credit or something like that, and you maybe have, 25, 35 people in the bar, to a performance hall of 1,000. And what you don't have is enough places that are a couple hundred.
Right.
And you need those kinds of performance places. And the Masonic Lodge, I guess, is more challenging to book now. What can we do to help artists in Mississauga?
Well, one example would be we can use some of the funding that we're getting from the municipal accommodation tax. I also serve on the Board of Tourism Mississauga. And if these are venues and they're going to have performers that we can argue will bring people into Mississauga because they want to see that band, I think we've got a very good argument to help fund some of this stuff through the hotel tax or municipal accommodation tax, as it's known, and provide the Masonic Lodge or the Streetsville Legion or whatever physical a venue is available so that we can do these kinds of events that are going to be the 100 to 200 people that can be in there and enjoy these rock and roll bands. So I'm all in favor of that. I'm willing to work on that as a former board member of the Mississauga Arts Council, as well as a current member of the Tourism Mississauga Board. I think there's a lot more we can do. I know Gil's been working on, the Music City, making Mississauga a music city. I think it's outstanding. I think it's fantastic. And I think we should get on with it, and we should be celebrating more of the arts and culture in Mississauga.
Awesome. Brad, I used to do a lot of campaign consulting, and I said people had to practice that 1 minute speech at the door when you've got just a couple of seconds when someone opens the door to give them the pitch, and be able to really well answer the question, why should I vote for you? So Brad Butt, why should I vote for you?
Well, I'm happy to catch you home today. My name is Brad Butt. I'm running to be the new councillor of Ward 11 in the city of Mississauga. Our longtime councillor has decided to retire, so we will be electing a new councillor. And I just want to show you through my canvas card that I'm going to leave with you that I have the most experience, knowledge, and dedication of any candidate running in this race. And that's why I should be your new councillor. You'll be able to count on me to get things done.
Do you have a website?
bradbutt.ca.
Brad Butt, thank you so much for joining us. Good luck.
Thanks, Brian. Nice to see you.
That's our show for tonight. I'm going to have numerous different candidates that are in Mississauga and Brampton coming and showcasing themselves and talking about the policies and subjecting themselves to my questions on the policies so that you can know a little bit more about who you want to vote for on October the 24th. Thanks for joining us, everyone. Good night.